The story of Norman Broome's military history that you are about to hear and to see is very disturbing. We have attempted to downplay most of the more horrific experiences, but in order to tell Norman's story, some examples of brutality had to be included. It is certainly not our intent, however, to open up old wounds or to encourage new prejudices or hatreds. Rather, it is our hope that by including some of the more graphic experiences, that those who view this story will appreciate even more the courage and resiliency of our soldiers during this period of our history. It is always so amazing to us who speak to these men who have endured so much and have had so much difficulty and shown so much courage and determination. They are truly to be admired and respected. Now, Norm, I've looked forward to this interview with you for many, many months. And I'd like to get started in talking about you and your story before, well, let's go back to the time before enlistment, and particularly to your early childhood, because that has a real bearing on some of the things that you experienced and how you were able to experience and come through some of those difficult times that you came through. It's my understanding that you were born in Minitonas, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And it's also my understanding that you've moved around a great deal. Why was that?
Well, my dad had nothing. He was just working for this farmer and that farmer, and wherever he could get a job. There was no such a thing as relief in those days. Mm-hmm. And
so you moved from farm to farm where he found work?
Yes. Yeah.
That meant that you certainly would have attended many schools, eh?
Yes.
Where did you start?
Ravensworth.
And Ravensworth, for those who don't know, is where?
Is Minitonas Hill, the east side of Minitonas Hill.
I see. And that was for how many grades were you there?
So 2, 3 maybe,
mm-hmm.
something like that.
And from there you would have moved to?
Pretty Valley.
Pretty Valley.
Yeah. And
you would have taken what, 4 and 5 there?
I think so, yes.
Okay. It's a long time ago, isn't it?
Yeah.
And from there you went to?
Mountain Crest.
Mountain Crest.
Yeah. And
again, for those who don't know, where is Mountain Crest?
How would I explain that? 5 miles from the Pretty Valley School. You could go 3 miles south, and then east a mile, and a mile south again.
So it's located right on the foothills of the mountain?
Yes, that's right.
I see. And when did you quit school?
When I was in grade 6.
So education wasn't a long time. Why did you quit?
I had to go to work.
Uh-huh.
Went out working with my dad for a while on thrashing gangs, Huey McCullough's thrashing gang to start with, big steam engine. And
so even in those days you were pretty independent and you looked after yourself quite a bit, didn't you?
yes, yeah.
Today I guess you wouldn't get away with that. That would be called child labor, but in those days it was kind of expected that you
That's right.
went to work early.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you were paid in those days? Like what sort of monies you would make?
$1.25 a day.
$1.25 a day.
Yeah. $1.25 a day for thrashing.
And that would be part of the family income?
Yes.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, after doing farm labor for a while, you worked in other places, right?
Yes, I worked at National Mills for all of one winter. In fact, I joined the Army from there.
From National Mills.
1939, yeah.
Okay.
I worked that winter.
Well, let's talk about joining the Army. When did you join?
In June 1939.
Okay. And where was this?
I rode the freight train from National Mills to Winnipeg.
Oh, okay. It did, now...
Well, I joined right in Swan River as far as that
Oh, I
goes.
see.
And we
I see.
still rode the freight train to Winnipeg because I had 10 cents when I got to Winnipeg.
Well, I'm sure the military looked after you. I mean, you didn't
Yeah,
live
then.
long on 10 cents, even in those days.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Now, you lived in a rather isolated community, even Kenville in those days, Minitonas, National Mills. I mean, those were not places that were really aware of what was happening in the world as much as the bigger cities were. What did you know about the war and what was happening?
You might say nothing. No.
So you went into the war being very naive about it, eh?
Right, yeah. Yeah. Well, we got 2 months training.
In Winnipeg.
Yeah, 1 month in Winnipeg and 1 month in Fort William and Port Arthur.
Okay, so you, that was it.
That was it, 2 months training. But as far as learning how to go use the rifle, I knew that anyway.
Well, yes, yes.
Yeah.
You'd have learned that on the farm and
Right,
hunting
yeah.
and so forth. You, after your training, your 2 months, however brief 2 months training is, and that's not very long, of course, you had a choice of what unit to join, right?
Yes.
And you chose what?
I was in the Winnipeg Rifles, and then I chose to join the Winnipeg Grenadiers because we were going overseas.
Aha. So you wanted to see action.
Yeah.
Boy, you got a lot of action, didn't you? More than you bargained for.
Yeah.
But you, at that time, you had no idea that what you were
No,
going to be up
no,
against at
no,
all.
none whatever.
Okay. Now let's go to, you're a member of the Grenadiers. And when did you know, this is 1941 now, when did you know approximately that you were going to be shipped out to, in other words, where did this embarkation on the train in Winnipeg take place? This was in early November
Yes. Yeah.
of 41, okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so now, you had no idea even at that time where you were going, did you?
No, we didn't. No. We were on the ship before we knew where we was going.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Now, you learned later on that you were going to Hong Kong when you were on the ship, as you said.
Yeah.
I remember reading a great deal about, there was a tremendous controversy about sending you men to Hong Kong because even as Churchill said, and I think his words were, there's not the slightest chance of holding Hong Kong.
Right.
So you guys never really had a chance from the very beginning as far as
No, not
your
really.
tour of duty was concerned.
No, no.
I want to just, if I may, take a minute of the time. I want to, this book, Hong Kong Poems by Gary Geddes, we're going to refer to this book quite often, and there's a particular poem, because poetry sort of tells the story much briefer and probably more succinctly than we could ever describe it. But there's a poem here that he has no title for. And I would just like to read a couple of stanzas and then get your reaction to it. The Prime Minister knew what Churchill said concerning the defense of Hong Kong. He wrote the words more or less verbatim in his diary. Let us devote ourselves to what is possible. Japan will take Hong Kong beyond the shadow of a doubt when the time comes. Think only of a presence. Symbolic garrison, that was the operative phase. And then Geddes goes on to describe our Prime Minister's reaction and why he chose to send you guys over there. and then I want to ask for your reaction. And this is regarding our Prime Minister. But he knew also the words of a mother in Moose Jaw who would not release the hand he extended until he heard her thoughts about the war. A farm dying from neglect, while husband and son rotted in the Yorkshire rain. In other words, what he's saying is, our Prime Minister didn't have a choice. People demanded that the Canadian soldiers see some action.
Right, yeah.
And I guess you said earlier that you were ready to see some action, wherever that was, eh?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, now that you look at it in the past, do you blame the Canadian government for sending you guys over there knowing that there wasn't a chance? I mean, how do you feel about that?
For quite a while I did, all right, with military procedure, that's all. Orders was orders, we had to go.
So you've kind of forgiven the Canadian government for putting you into an impossible situation.
Yeah.
And I guess the government, in a sense, to be completely honest, were in a sort of an impossible situation too, because they were under pressure to
That's right.
for the Canadian soldier to see some action.
Right.
Okay. Now, you left Winnipeg by train, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What was the atmosphere like in Winnipeg at this particular time? Now, Winnipeg wasn't the heart of the military operations in Canada. What was it like for you there before you're leaving on the train?
There was quite a farewell party there. But other than that, my parents weren't there or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a big crowd come to see the train pull out.
It was a kind of a happy event, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, yeah.
Yeah. People
Yes.
really didn't appreciate what was happening in the war, did they?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
This was still a kind of an event to sort of celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
But that pretty well changed.
Yeah.
It certainly changed for you guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, now you left Vancouver aboard the Awatia.
That's
That
right.
was a ship. Now there were two ships involved in this leaving, wasn't there?
Yeah. Yes, there was. What they call the other one?
Prince Robert, was it?
Prince Robert. That's
I think
right.
I remember reading
Yeah,
about
that was
the
our
Prince Robert.
gunboat, as we called it.
Yeah, and it had all your equipment on it, didn't it? Or most of your
Yeah,
equipment.
most of it. Yeah.
Now you went from Vancouver to
The first place we stopped was Honolulu, Hawaii. We
yes.
went in there to take on water and fuel.
Now you told me a story about when you docked, there was a ship right next door to you.
Right next door to us. In fact, we were throwing cigarettes back and forth. It was a Japanese hospital ship loaded with Japanese soldiers. And I think they chased us out of there. The Japanese submarines chased us for 7, 8 days, and right down to the equator pretty well, running from these Japanese submarines.
Now it's your belief that that hospital ship was really a spy ship, eh?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
That ship is going to come into play later on,
It is, yeah.
and we'll talk about that later. But
Yeah.
it's kind of ironic that you would see that ship in Honolulu.
That's right, yeah.
So when you left Honolulu, you didn't go directly to Hong Kong, apparently.
No, run all over the ocean away from them Jap submarines. I think it was about 8 days they chased us. It was down just about to Australia and across the equator
Okay.
before we got away from them.
But you got separated from the Prince Robert, didn't you?
Yes, we got separated on that same thing, on that chase. Prince Robert went someplace different. I
Yeah.
don't know whereabouts.
Was it a slower ship? Could it not keep up with the Awatia? Or do you think it was just an avoidance issue?
Just avoidance, getting away from them submarines more than anything. These both ships we was on, well, the one that we was on, we had a few torpedoes there, but we had nothing to fight a submarine with.
Okay, now it took you what, about 21 days of sailing?
21 days, yeah.
21 days.
Yeah.
That's a long time on the ocean.
It is, yeah.
And was it, other than the fact that you were chased by submarines, was it a difficult voyage for you?
No, not really. It was, a few days it was pretty rough. Storms, big waves. Other than that, it wasn't too bad.
Now that ship was commanded and pretty well controlled by the Aussies, was it not?
Yeah, Australian crew was on that, yeah.
Yeah. You talked to me about the food on there.
Yeah.
I thought was kind of funny.
Nothing but mutton. That was the worst part of it.
And a lot of that food went overboard.
Oh, a lot of that went to the sharks. Yeah.
So you were followed by the ocean's garbage personnel, eh?
That's right, yeah.
Now, if I can take you to Hong Kong, you landed in Hong Kong, and you landed, I understand, by looking at, doing some research, you landed at Holt Wharf at Kowloon.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And what were your thoughts and impressions on getting to Kowloon? When you saw that place, what was it like for you?
We sure didn't think much of it because, well, the English Army come and took us over from there to our barracks. But the Chinese was all over and dirty. It was a heck of a place.
A lot of poor,
Oh, yes.
suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah. But life, I understand, at the barracks itself, for the first few days at least, wasn't bad. Like, you guys were fairly well treated, eh?
Fairly well treated, yes, until they put us on them English rations. The margarine, you break it like cheese. It was hard. You couldn't spread it. That's the first we'd ever saw margarine.
Is that
You
right?
just break a chunk off and eat it. You couldn't spread it on bread.
Gee.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, one of the things you told me about was the Japanese spies and the Chinese fifth columnists. But they were all over the place.
All over the place. In fact, one of the Japanese officers was the barber in that camp we was in Kowloon. He'd come with a straight razor and shave you. Well, he didn't cut our throat, but he didn't.
The servants were probably spies.
Yes, half of them at least were spies.
So they knew you and what you were going to do and where you were all the time.
All the time, yeah.
You really didn't stand much of a chance, did you?
No, say not. No.
Now, what about training? When you guys went over there, you only had 2 months of basic training, which means marching and a little bit of rifle training.
That's right.
Did you have any training over there?
No, no.
None to speak of, eh?
None to speak of, no. No, we was only there a few days till the war broke out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, now, for those who don't know, Hong Kong is very mountainous, isn't it?
It is really, yeah.
So you had no training as far as fighting in the mountains? And
None whatever, no.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, when you got there, were you still concerned that war was really a present danger to you for the first few days, or how did you react to that? I mean, what was it like for you?
Well, we were glad to see action, but I really don't know. It was a day or two before we really got into fighting.
Yes, it wasn't until the 8th of December.
Yeah, right.
And you guys were there in when? Beginning of the end of November you arrived there.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so you had a few days.
Yeah, there was
Not many.
just a few days too.
Now, And let's get to the actual Battle of Hong Kong, because that was a very brutal affair.
Mm-hmm.
On the 8th of December, 1941,
Yeah.
that was basically the 7th of December in Canada,
Yeah, right.
the day that Pearl Harbor was attacked. That was when Hong Kong was attacked, at least the new territories, that
Mm-hmm.
the mainland north of
The
Hong Kong.
mainland, that's
Yes.
right, yeah.
Now, it was primarily defended by the Brits and the Indians at that particular time.
Yes, that's
You
right.
guys were on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any attack on the island on the 8th of December?
8th of December.
That is the first day that war broke
No,
out?
not really.
Okay.
Most of that was on the mainland,
Right.
Kowloon, and that's when we left Kowloon and go across to the island.
Mhm.
It was mostly the first day or two was Jap planes came over and machine gunned us.
Oh, so you were not fighting on the ground, but there were planes coming over?
There was planes coming over, yes.
Did you get to fire at any of those planes?
Oh, yes,
You did, eh?
yes. In fact, one old Dutchman in Winnipeg and myself who shot one down
Really?
with the 303 British rifles.
Is that right?
Yeah. He came over pretty low and we just shot the bottom out of it. I guess we hit the pilot likely.
Uh-huh.
Dived right into the sand right along the edge of the ocean.
Did you get a close-up view of what you had done? Did
Oh,
you go
yes.
down and see him?
Yes, we were right close there.
Oh, really?
The motor of the plane went out of sight in the sand, but the Jap was cement blocks on his feet. He was cemented in the plane. All of them were cemented in there. They had to dive that plane on their target.
The
Right.
kamikaze.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were cemented in.
Yeah, they had cement blocks on their feet in that plane. They couldn't get out.
That is so
Yeah.
amazing to us.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was just a small plane, but they all carried a bomb on it, and if they couldn't shoot, they had machine guns too in the plane. If they couldn't get rid of their target with the machine guns, they'd dive the plane on it.
Commit suicide.
Yeah. Yeah.
That helps us a little to probably understand the kind of treatment you people received later, because their philosophy of life was certainly different from ours, wasn't it?
Oh yes, far different.
Now, on December 11th, according to my research, the Allied forces, all of them, the Brits, the volunteers, the Indians, and there was actually one contingent of grenadiers sent over to help the Brits. They all retreated back to the island,
Mm-hmm.
okay, on December the 11th. Was there any action, were you involved in any action other than shooting down some planes at this time?
No.
Not yet, eh?
No, not yet.
Okay. Did you see any of that flow of people, the mass of people? Like there must have been civilians along with the soldiers coming back across the strait to Hong Kong.
Yes, yes.
Did you see any of that?
Yes, we did.
What was that like? That was terrible.
Yes, it really was. They were on sampans. Sampans, a little Chinese boat, something like a canoe or a little bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But they were hanging over the edge of that. Everything was just loaded, coming to the island, trying to get away from them.
Yeah. I guess the civilians in that area were as afraid of the Japanese as you guys were.
Yes, they were.
Now, after the December the 11th, okay, the island was attacked formally on the 18th, according to my research.
There, yeah.
But there was action before then, wasn't there? Before
Yes,
the
there
18th?
was, yeah.
And you guys were involved in some of that, weren't you?
Yes.
Where did they come from? Where did they come from? Victoria? Did they land on the city, or do you have any idea where they landed and how they got to the island?
They landed over on the mainland, but
Yes.
they came across in little boats, rubber rafts
The soldiers.
to the island. Yes, the Jap soldiers.
Amongst the civilians and all those other people, is
Yeah.
that how they, or did they come as or do you know how they got there?
Yeah, I really don't know that part of it, no. Because when they started coming to the island, they came in little rubber boats, thousands of them. We sank dozens of them right in the water before they got landed.
Is that right?
You just shoot the rubber boat and down they'd go. But,
A lot of them obviously got on shore.
oh, a lot of them did, yeah.
And do you remember what part of the island you were doing the shooting? Where was this? Do you have any recollection of that?
One Shy Gap.
One Shy Gap.
Yeah, it was, well, it's all right close to the ocean. But that was the name of the place, One Shy Gap. And from there we had to back up to Stanley Peak.
Okay. But the war, that is the main attack force, still hadn't come to the island, and as I said, and we'll get to that in just a minute.
Right.
When the Allies were pushed off the mainland, the Japanese forces came across a very narrow neck of land, and I just forgotten the name of the place for a moment. I'll think of it later. But there was a first aid station there. You were on the west side of the island. This is on the east side of the island, so you would not have seen any of this.
No.
But there was a first aid station on there, and I want to just again refer to this book, The Poems of Hong Kong. I want to read something to you that took place, and because I think you heard about this. It's called Sullivan, and these poems in this book are about characters who were in Hong Kong. Some of them survived, some of them didn't.
Yeah.
Some of them were in your camp, in fact, as I understand. There's a strange hush at St. Stephen's as we wait for them to storm the college. Nurses drift like butterflies among the injured, offering a word, a touch, a cigarette. When the enemy bursts through the door, I'm lying on a cot at the far end of the corridor, my head bandaged, my legs supported in a sling. Two soldiers proceed to bayonet the sick and wounded in their beds, to a chorus of screams and protests. A nurse throws herself on top of one of the boys to protect them. It might have been a kid from Queens, and they were both killed by a single thrust of a bayonet. I suppose they were sweethearts, pinned at last. She does not struggle. Her hands open and close once like a tiny wings, and the dark stain on her white starched uniform spread like a chrysanthemum, a blood-red sun. I cut the cord supporting my leg, slip on the nearest smock, and stand foolishly at attention, making the salute. My right index finger brushes the damp cotton of the bandage. Later, the butchers were shot by their own officers. One, apparently, had lost a brother in the final assault.
I remember that.
You remember this,
Yeah.
eh?
I wasn't there, but I remember about hearing all about it, yeah.
Things like this happened pretty well regularly, didn't it?
Oh, yes, yeah.
It's kind of interesting, though, that he says at the end of the poem, but the butchers, the guys who did the bayoneting there, were shot by their own officers.
Right, yeah.
There was a certain amount of honor, wasn't there, even with all of this brutality that was going on. Did you recognize that honor among the Japanese soldiers, that sometimes it came through?
Just the odd one, yes. Yeah.
They were particularly, as I understand it, respectful when people died in battle.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
But if you were giving up, you were treated differently, weren't you?
Yes. Yeah, right.
Well, let's now go to December the 18th. This is when the main force battle took place. Okay? You said something about continuous fighting. There was no rest. From November the 11th on, you were fighting almost every day.
Night and day, yes. Never had my boots off.
Tell me, can you describe for me, what was that like? Like, how did that evolve? Were you fighting in the streets? Were you fighting in the mountains? How was that going?
In the mountains. And in one place we were in a house upstairs, a big English house, and fighting with machine guns out the windows. And I guess I fell asleep on the machine gun. When I woke up, I was in the basement, and there was no upstairs left. They'd machine gunned and bombed the whole thing right off.
How did you get downstairs?
Some of my friends or whoever was there took me down, I guess.
You told me something that's very hard for me to believe, but I believe it when you say it, and that is, most of the time you were fighting pretty well on your own. Like you weren't fighting with a company or with a group. It was sort of man to man, survive as you can go. Eh?
That's right, yeah. There was a day or two we had an English sergeant with us, but he got separated and we were just on our own, just the most of us.
Was there times when you were fighting all by yourself, nobody else around you?
Only once. I got separated from there was 3 or 4 of us on the hillside, and some of them had to run back and got killed. It was only once I got fighting on my own there. I went around a bunch of willows, and there's 3 Japs. I shot one and put the bayonet through another and hit the other one with the butt of my rifle. How I done it, I don't know.
Just adrenaline and reaction.
Right. Yeah.
God. You see these things in movies, you don't think that they would...
You don't, yeah. Who's supposed to believe that?
Yes, yes.
It's just happened so fast. It's you had the instincts, there they are, you got to do something fast.
Yeah.
But I was lucky there was only 3. That was enough.
Oh, that certainly is enough. Now, there's a story you tell about Riley and Stan Preston.
Yes.
Could you tell us that story? That happened apparently around December the 18th.
Yes. I was going up a hill, and there were Japanese trench mortar bombs would dig a hole in the hillside where it wasn't rock, about 4 feet deep. And as each hole was blue there, we'd run and get in that hole, because the next one's further back. And Stanley Preston was just ahead of me, and he didn't quite make it. The trench mortar hit him. There wasn't even his boots left. So I went down the hill and told Riley, and that was it. I couldn't even pick him up.
You knew him before, though, didn't you?
Yes, yes.
That must have been awful.
Yeah, it was. I never even told Riley's wife, Helen Preston.
Mm-hmm.
I never even told her, and her daughter. I never told them.
No, it's not something you want to convey.
No.
Now, from the 18th to the 20th, you are still at a place called, well, your headquarters are. Now, you're not necessarily, but you're at a place called Pak Phu Long. Do you remember that? Pak Phu Long? That name sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay. So you were still involved in fighting at this time, hand to hand, although the main force of the enemy had still not arrived. You were still not meeting the main forces. You were still dealing with these almost like guerrillas. These were
That's right.
free fighters.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you got to, on the 20th, you got to a place called Mount Nicholson. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Mount Nicholson. Do you remember any part of that? What that was like and what was going on there?
Not very much.
Not very much. It was just more and more fighting. That
Yeah,
was it.
right.
Okay. Now, and I'm going to now rely on my research, and if you can remember any of these things, let me know, and we'll talk about it. There was an attack on Mount Nicholson. You guys were driven off. You were asked to attack again and take Mount Nicholson back, but that attack failed. You guys didn't get Mount Nicholson back. Do you remember any of that? Or is that just all a blur as part of the rest of it?
Yes, I'd say that's just a blur.
Yeah.
It was so many days and nights there. It was, didn't know hardly what to do. We could hardly stand up. We were so tired.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't care whether this place was called Swan River or Mount Nicholson. You just wanted to survive.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Again, I go back to the research. Your group withdrew to Mount Cameron and to Wanche Gap.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this was on the 22nd of December. We're getting now to the end.
Yeah, right.
Okay. You remember the gap, though, don't you?
Yes. Yes, I remember that all right.
There was some pretty good fighting going on there.
There sure was, yeah.
Do you remember any part that you can relate to us about that?
Yes, we had what they call the Hong Kong volunteers, was Chinese
Right.
soldiers,
Right.
and they started taking our hand grenades and everything and working with the Japs.
Really?
So, yes. So we killed quite a few of them right there.
Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
See, none of the history books that I looked up mention any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So the Chinese volunteers turned to the other side.
Right, yeah. And this one old guy from Winnipeg, he was a big Dutchman. He hung 12 of them. They were up these big birch or oak trees with flashlights signaling the Japanese, and he caught them in that tree and brought them all down and hung the whole works of them.
Another case of just survive.
Yeah.
About this time, the Japanese started using megaphones and music, and they spread leaflets all over the place.
I remember the leaflets, yeah.
Asking you guys to surrender.
Surrender and you go home tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
How did you react to that? How did the Canadians react to that?
They just fought all the harder. They knew that was all wrong.
Yeah. But some of the Indians, I understand from my research, went over to the Japanese side.
I heard that a time or two, yes. But there was no Indians taken prisoner.
There
The
weren't.
Japs lined them up and shot every one of them.
Really?
Yeah. In the bunch we was with anyway. I don't know about the other part of the island. Yeah.
See, the history books don't tell us that either.
No, there's a lot of history books don't know and wouldn't tell anyway. But one instance, our machine guns were, the Japanese didn't know how to operate them. So this Indian was going to show them. And he had a full magazine, 45 shells in it. It's a 45 revolver shell is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy guns was what they didn't know how to use. Big drum on them.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So this Indian said to gather around, a whole bunch of them. He motioned for them. He'd show them how. And he got the Japs all around him, and then he went, turned around, and he shot 50 of them or more before they got him. So there was no Indians left. The bunch that was back there, they shot them all.
Oh, I see. So they got
Yeah.
their revenge.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
There'd be 100 or more watching this. They shot them all. We saw that.
You did.
Yeah. We figured we'd be next, but they didn't turn on us.
On the 23rd of December, you guys moved to Aberdeen to the reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you remember the reservoir.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I do. That the reservoir was a huge built-in place for water, for the dams all around it, I guess is what you'd call it. It was a basin full of water, but it was a big one.
It was very important to you people to keep that reservoir, wasn't it?
Yes, because that was the only drinking water that was there for miles.
But you couldn't hold that.
No.
So once you were driven away from the reservoir, the battle was almost over because you guys didn't have any water after that.
No, that was the end of it. There was no water no more.
Okay, so let's go now to the December the 24th. And you guys were driven off Bennett's Hill. There was a fierce bombardment of artillery at that particular time.
That's right, yeah.
And a number of Canadians were sort of killed because of that bombardment.
That's right, yes. Lots of them were.
Yeah. Do you know is there any particular incident that you can recall on that?
Only after that bombardment, we helped one of our lieutenants. He was shot through the side here. We helped him up the hill, but before he got up the hill to the barracks, he died.
Now, somewhere about this time, and I don't know whether you were near this incident or understood it, again, my research tells me that the Japanese send over 2 civilians under a flag of truce to ask you guys to surrender. Was that anywhere near where you were?
No.
So you wouldn't remember that?
I don't remember that, no.
Okay. But, of course, the Canadian Army completely rejected surrender. They wouldn't surrender.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But on the 24th, you guys were totally out of ammunition. You were completely surrounded. And you gave up at 3:15, the history books tell me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's when you quit. Tell me, what was happening with you when you quit? When you put up your arms, put down your rifle and said, that's it, we've had enough?
We were all lost like a bunch of sheep. We didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
There was no way we knew we could not do any more. They were like ants all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
They were so thick. But Christmas morning, that's when we did really surrender.
Mm-hmm.
That morning they were just so thick there was no way you could do anything.
Yeah. The instant that you surrendered, how many men would it be around you? How many Canadians were with you at that particular time?
There must have been about 900,000, somewhere there.
No, but at the spot where you were when that came, were you with your full unit that time when you surrendered?
What was left of the unit,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
It's about, I'd say there was 8. I don't know.
No, okay.
Too
That's
many.
fine. Yeah. How were you treated right at that moment when you were surrendered? Were you treated reasonably by the Japanese?
Well, Yes, in a kind of a way. They lined us up in threes. We were in the army. They lined us up in fours, but the Japanese style, it was threes. And they'd count off 100, and go to the camp. The other bunch went someplace else. That's the way they counted us off.
I don't know whether I even want to mention this, but you told me a horrific story about the Japanese counting them off and deciding.
Yeah, they'd count off 100 and shoot that bunch, 3 of them. They'd drop down. That was the end of the line.
And 3 soldiers would die, and then they start
Yeah.
counting 100 again.
Start again, yeah.
Oh, man.
Sometimes the Jap soldier would shoot with a rifle, and the next time it'd be a Japanese officer with a revolver, and shoot the 3 of them.
How did you feel yourself about surrendering? What was your attitude at the time? Were you in agreement with surrender?
At that time, yes.
I'd like to read now, this man, you know this man. He's called Tom Forsyth. He was part of your company.
Yeah, right.
And there's a quotation in this book, no price too high.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to read to you,
Mm-hmm.
because it's hard to put into words our feelings when we heard the governor of the colony had surrendered to the enemy. I saw some men break down and cry like children. What, surrender now, they sobbed, after all the good men we lost? I never dreamed it could happen, up to the last moment, until Lieutenant Corrigan ordered us to lay down our arms.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you remember Lieutenant
Yes.
Corrigan, and you remember Forsyth, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Corrigan grabbed a sword from a Jap officer. He split his hand wide open, but he grabbed that sword anyway. And we sewed that hand back up in the camp. And just split it. But he killed that officer. The war was still going.
Yes,
just
that
the
was
last
yeah.
day or so.
Now, Norm, we're going to enter the next phase of your military history, and that is as a prisoner of war.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after you were counted off in your groups of 100, where did they take you?
Over to Kowloon Barracks.
To the Kowloon Barracks.
Yep.
And it was there that you began working at the Kai Tak Airport.
That's right, yeah.
Now, I'd like to talk to you about the Kai Tak Airport, because that is a very important part of your history, and it was one of the horrific parts of your story. Today, this airport looks like any modern airport,
Yes.
but it's got a terrible story connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
Before I ask you your experiences, and I know again that you know this story, and I want to read a little bit about a piece of prose that is in this book by Gary Geddes. I just want to read a certain part of it.
Yeah.
It's entitled Mallory, and Mallory is helping one of the French Canadians who were part of this
Mm-hmm.
thing, and he's helping him. He goes into telling him that he's helped this French Canadian is very, very tired and sore and sick, and so when he loads his buckets, those buckets you guys used to carry, you know, those
Mm-hmm.
bamboo buckets.
Yeah. Abus. Yeah.
Yes, he would half load them so the guy wouldn't be much of a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
But even at that, this fellow named Delisle couldn't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll pick up the story here, and it says, "If we can make it to the edge without attracting attention, no one will notice the size of his load. We are only 20 yards from the water when one basket dips below knee level and brushes the ground. It is enough to betray him. He falls straight forward on his face. The wicker baskets, unfortunately, remain upright and reproachful beside him. I stand at attention, my legs aching under the weight. Delisle does not move. I think his heart is given out, but I can hear him whisper, "J'excuse, j'excuse." Two guards are kicking and shouting. They drag him to his feet and knock him back and forth and between them like a rag doll. One of them reaches into a half-filled basket and throws a handful of dirt into his face. The closed eyes seem to infuriate him as much as the basket. "Dumbo, cheat, no good." Delisle's bowels choose at that moment to discharge, though he had eaten nothing for days. It's a miracle of creation or of criticism. The guard's face contorts and he strikes Delisle in the face with his rifle butt. Then they are dragging him to the water's edge. All work on the reclamation has stopped. He is on his knees and he has begun to sing one of those folk songs that has followed us from Sherbrooke to Newfoundland, across Canada, and aboard the Awatea. I can feel my legs giving out and the bamboo poles cutting into my shoulders. The fog is breaking up and the sunlight reflects off the sword as it falls repeatedly on his neck. He remains somehow on his knees and has to be pushed over. One of them kicks his head down the small embankment into the sea. Several of us are detailed to dig a shallow grave, and he is buried headless beneath the runway at Kai Tak Airport. You saw a lot of this, didn't you?
I saw that, yes.
There's a lot of Canadian soldiers, or not a lot, I say a number of Canadian soldiers, buried below this modern airport that are still there.
That's right. Yeah.
With those Canadians would be British,
yes.
volunteers, Chinese people.
No Chinese, no.
Just Canadians and British.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people who land on that airport are aware that it costs so many lives.
No, I don't really think so. Any of them realize that. There might be some. Yeah, there's one guy from home there. He landed on that airport and he said he thought about it.
Okay. So there is a bit of a remembrance for those men who lost their lives there.
Yeah, right.
Tell me a story about Dave Chabot.
Dave Chabot, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. He was just one of them working in the mine, and he made the mistake to hit a Japanese underground there, one of the bosses. So that was the last we saw of him. They took him out of there and killed him.
So you had to be very careful how you spoke to those officers and men of the Japanese army.
Oh, yes, yes.
Can you recall some of your experiences about Kai Tak Airport? You were sick quite a bit of the time there,
yes,
weren't you?
Yes, we were pretty near all had diarrhea because rice to eat, that's about all. And as long as our temperature was 103, it still had to go to work. It could go to 106 there. It was
Really?
Temperature was, I don't know, it was different. As long as you could walk, you had to go to work.
You, at this time, how did you feel about some of the guards and so forth? How did you feel about those people?
We sure didn't like that. Kamloops Kid was one of them, was one of the worst ones there. And he was one that ordered this, cut the head off of that guy and put him in the ocean.
Is that right?
Yep.
We're going to talk about the Kamloops Kid. There's also a poem written about him in this book. His real name was Inui I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't know that. No.
Okay. The poem goes on to say, they used to call me the Kamloops Kid and talk behind my back in camp. I was born beside an orchard in the interior and went to school in the valley, beautifully cultivated in terms of land but not people. I couldn't wait to leave and pursue a civilized education in Japan. They assumed that I was just getting even for the abuse I took as a kid in BC, dodging stones and insults in the streets, being laughed at and called that little yellow bastard by the white gangs at harvest time. After dark, I used to lob culls into their midst amongst the campfire like grenades and run like hell. Actually, I got the shit kicked out of me more often in the Japanese army than in the hands of the racists in Canada. What finally broke my restraint was news of the evacuation, my mother and sister in boxcars like cattle, shunted back and forth from Vancouver to internment camps in the interior. I couldn't forgive those oversized bastards for proving I was right after all. When I claimed immunity at the trials in Tokyo as a British subject, the judge obliged me by hanging me in Hong Kong. Everyone thought it was a great joke. Bad apple, he said. Now, what the poet is trying to suggest is that the Kamloops Kid was sort of seeking revenge for the bad treatment he received in BC, but it still must be pretty hard to forgive whatever motivation he had.
That's for sure.
He treated you particularly, or the men in your unit particularly badly, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Is there any one instance that you can recall that would sort of epitomize, besides this beheading that you...
Yes, I saw him make one guy stand and hold a rock. This rock was about 25, 30 pounds. Hold it above his head and just make him hold it there till he dropped. If the rock would come down to his head, he'd jab him with the bayonet in the back, hold it up. Kamloops Kid done this until that guy just passed out. Dropped rock and all.
Did you ever have the opportunity to talk to him at all, personally, the Kamloops Kid? Can you recall that?
Not really,
No.
but he'd talk to the whole bunch of us as we were walking back and forth to work, talking good English too.
What kinds of things can you recall? I know it's very long ago and very hard for you to recall, but what kinds of things did he say to you, to the group?
About us being on holiday, isn't it nice to be in the Orient on holidays?
He was taunting you.
Taunting us all the time, yeah. Walk a little faster, you're not tired yet, and you could hardly move.
Yeah. He just kept digging at you all the time.
Yeah, all the time, yeah.
Now, you began a series of diaries. It's unfortunate that they're so small we can't photograph them. There's a whole series of them.
Right.
That begin on January the 5th, 1942. There is a song that you recorded. I don't know if you remember this, but I thought it was so poignant that I wanted to ask you about it. It was so amazing to me. It's called Back to Michigan in the key of G. Now, I don't know why you would put the key of G, but anyway, that's what you did. And you wrote down these words: I want to go back, I want to go back, I want to go back to the farm, far away from harm, with a milk pail on my arm. I miss the rooster, the one that used to wake me up at 4 a.m. I think your city's great, very pretty. Nevertheless, I want to be there, I want to be there. A certain someone, and I can't read the rest. That's why I wish. And that's, again, I can't read the rest.
Yeah.
You was that a song that meant something to you?
Yeah, I guess it did at that
I
time.
want to go home back to the farm.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Norm, before we go on and take a look into your career as a POW and look at all of your diaries, I want to go back to the actual battle at Hong Kong. And there's one thing we forgot to talk about, and that is that thing you mentioned, that frontline rum.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that, would you please?
The British Army had that frontline rum. It wasn't the Canadian Army that had that. And after the first day of the battle, they told us to come around to this building and fill our water bottles with frontline rum, just the Army water bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And that was enough, because you'd only needed to take a couple of mouthfuls, and that was good.
They never told you what it was or what it was going to do, right?
No, they didn't.
You know, the other day, sometimes when I can't sleep, I listen to overseas radio on CBC, and there was a report from Austria, and Austria was having a great deal of trouble today with people into amphetamines, and one of the amphetamines that they're into is the same stuff that the Japanese and Chinese and the British soldiers were using, we'll call frontline rum. So the thing is still around, and it's a problem right now in Austria.
Mm-hmm. I don't doubt it.
But you didn't know there was an amphetamine, an upper, to really give you
No.
guys a charge, eh?
No, we didn't know that.
I mean, for people who fall asleep while firing a machine gun, I guess you needed something to keep you awake, but that was kind of a tough way to do it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, Norm, let's move on to your diaries. We have here in front of us a series of actually 4 diaries, a couple of them a little more homemade than the others.
Yeah.
And we will be reading, we'll be taking excerpts from these diaries. But before we do anything else, I'd like to tell you, how did you manage to keep these away from the Japanese soldiers? Like, you had to write in them every day, and you did. How did you keep them away?
Our floors had a 2-inch straw mat on it, and that was right next to the ground. And we'd just lift the corner of that and put it under, sometimes bury it under the ground so it wouldn't show up from the mat. Just a couple of inches under dirt.
Where would you find little booklets like this? The soldiers have them?
Yeah, some of
And
the Japanese soldiers had them. We get them from them somehow. I don't remember. We paid them so much, cent or whatever,
I see.
for them.
And you had to write in them when there weren't any Japanese guards around?
Right, yeah.
Okay. Okay, now let's get to the diaries themselves. And I want to start with January 23rd, 1942. Your diary says, moved from Kowloon to Hong Kong, North Point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now that was about a month after you were captured. just about a month. You were captured on the 24th of December, 25th of December.
25th, yeah.
This is the 23rd of January, so it's a month later.
Mm-hmm.
You've moved now to North Point. Can you tell us about North Point? Do you remember any part of that?
Yes, I remember some of it. We slept on cement floors with bamboo for a pillow. They made out of bamboo. It was all wood. You just put your head on that or your neck. That was our only pillow. And one blanket on that cement.
You were sick most of the time when you were in North Point,
Yes.
weren't you?
Yeah. I had pleurisy and beriberi. Pleurisy was the worst. The lungs would fill up to so far, and then no medication. They had a needle about so long. Just shove it between the ribs, drain that out. A cupful at a time.
Really?
Yeah.
That must have been painful.
It was painful, yeah. But it had to be done or you drowned
Yes.
when it built up so far.
And who did this? Your officer, your doctors, or their doctors?
It was American, really.
Oh, really?
He was a kind of a doctor, but he was in our camp.
Oh, I see.
He was prisoner too. He had nothing else. He had nothing to work with, really. He just had a few of them crude needles, and next to nothing to work with.
And you were sick pretty well the whole time you were at North Point, the whole 11 or 12 months?
11 months, pretty well, I was down. Yeah. And at the end of that 11 months, I had to crawl. I couldn't not walk. I had to learn to walk again. I was down to 80 pounds.
One of the things that really, well, I don't know if the word is impressed, but really shocked me, I guess, was the amount of time that you spent on talking about food and cigarettes in your diary. I'd like to talk about that a little bit. On February the 17th, as an example, in 1942, you said you traded my slice of bread for one cigarette. That's the last.
Yep.
The fact that you wrote so much about food and wrote so much about cigarettes, is that because you needed them so much? Is that?
Yes. Food especially, we wanted all the time. We was hungry all the time. And the cigarettes, of course, we missed that a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Did that also mean that not much was happening on those camps, that it was pretty boring, that you just sort of spent your life lying on your back? In your case, you were sick most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, as most of us in that camp at that time was sick. We couldn't work.
Yeah. So there wasn't really all that much to write about?
No, there wasn't. No, there sure wasn't.
Besides the fact that you were preoccupied with food and with cigarettes.
Right.
If we jump ahead 10 days to February the 27th, 1942, you say streetcars started running again today since December the 9th.
Yeah.
So obviously you were aware a little bit about what was happening outside the camp, were you?
Yes. Some close to the camp, what we could see, that's all.
Yeah. Sometime during this time, there was 4 British officers that escaped. Now, I don't know whether it was from Shamshir-Pol or from North Point.
That's from North Point.
They escaped from North Point.
Yeah.
Not many people escaped from these prisoners of war camps,
no.
did they?
No. Most of them was caught before they got 100 yards from the barracks.
So how much were you aware of what was happening around in the world? Was there any contact with the outside world through some sort of underground while you were in prison?
Not really. You'd hear rumors, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
There was actually no contact with outside at all.
None that you were aware of anyway?
No.
April the 6th, 1942, you write in your diary, I bought myself a rice sack from Patterson today for 2 slices of bread for a bed. I sure sleep tonight.
We had our beds up on cardboard boxes up off the floor to get away from the fleas. Fleas and bed bugs were so thick you couldn't sleep in that barracks all the time. But to get your bed up off the floor, it was a while before they would bother you.
So you had 2 rice sacks for a mattress on cardboard boxes?
Yeah, right.
This is going to be a real good night's rest, eh?
Yeah, right.
Now you have a friend in camp. He's with you all the time, a fellow by the name of Omen. I'm going to ask you about him in a little while because on April the 13th of 42, you write, Bowman and I put on our clothes and blankets through a debugger this morning.
Yeah.
What was this debugger?
It was right in the camp. It was just a steam pot, like a big double boiler iron pot is what it was. The fire under it, and the steam would come out, and you put your clothes over top of that. It would kill all the fleas and the eggs and everything in it.
Who is Bowman?
Herbie Bowman from Swan River.
Oh, okay.
He was a soldier over there too.
On May 21st, you write, B Company had a concert tonight, and we got a coronation cigarette. Had a hell of a good sing-song. Bowman sang.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
You guys made your own concerts, eh?
Yes, we did.
What's a coronation cigarette? Like, is that a brand name? Is that?
That's it.
This is the coronation cigarette.
Yeah.
And it's got a Japanese package on it.
Yeah.
And this is what you guys were smoking.
Yeah, that's right.
Holy smart. They must have been pretty hard to come by, were they?
Oh, they were, yes.
Well, I guess that's one way of quitting smoking, but under that kind of pressure, you wouldn't want to even try, would you?
Yeah.
Now we go on to May 23rd, 2 days later. You write, well, we signed our name on a piece of paper for the Japanese army, promising not to attempt to escape.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There's one thing about this quotation, though, that I want to get to, and I don't know whether this is a spelling error or whether you did this intentionally. I'd like to ask you about it. You spell peace as P-E-A-C-E, as in peace, not war, as opposed to a piece of paper, P-I-E-C-E. Did you do that intentionally? You put the wrong piece in there, and I'm wondering whether you did that with knowledge that this was a sort of a piece, a paper to have a peace between Japanese and yourselves.
Oh, yeah. I probably just misspelled it, that's all.
Okay. There was nothing intentional then?
Not really, no.
On May 29th, you said, drew cards for to write home. I got a chance to write the end of June. Now, this is May 29th.
Mm-hmm.
From this, I understand you guys would draw cards to see who would write. Could only one person a day write? Is that the way it worked? How did that work?
Something like that. Just once every 2 months or so, you'd get a chance to write. They wouldn't allow it any more often than that.
So you guys would draw cards to see who would be next the next month, sort of thing.
Yeah, right.
So you knew a month in advance that you could write one letter home.
That's about it, yeah.
Okay. Now, I hope this isn't too hard for you to talk about, because on June the 3rd, 1942, you write, well, Stanley, I'm thinking of you today. You are 8 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Stanley comes up again 3 times in your diary. You remember his birthday every time. Who's Stanley?
Except now. Stanley was my youngest brother.
You received a letter from some of the people at home. Most of the letters you never did get, did you?
That's right. Most of them we never did get.
all you kept was 3 letters, one from Harold, which is
My older brother.
your brother, and then your brother Ronald,
Right.
and one from your mother.
Yeah.
And those are the only 3 letters you kept.
That's the. I got a few more at home, but it was
Oh, I
not
see.
the same.
I see.
That's the only ones that ever got through was without a picture in them. Any with a
Oh.
picture, they burn it in front of you.
Is that right?
Yeah.
The next quotation from your diary may be a little difficult also for you to talk about, but on June the 7th, 1942, you say, "God damn the Grenadiers, the gut robbers, that's all they are." What happened that got you so angry?
They wouldn't give us nothing to eat. They couldn't. We was already prisoners, but we was cursing the Grenadiers, I guess, because we figured it was their fault, but it wasn't.
Oh, yeah. August the 20th, you write, 4 Grenadiers escaped last night. We stayed on parade until this afternoon. They didn't make it, did
They
they?
didn't get very far, no.
They were brought back in camp and shot, weren't they?
Yep. Yep. We didn't see them getting shot, but that's
Yeah.
what happened. They killed them.
Sunday, September the 6th. I can't stand still more than 3 minutes or I pass out. Camp life's tough, and I don't mean maybe.
That's right.
Were you sick then?
Yep. Yep.
October the 9th of 42, you write, long hot day. I was a pallbearer for Morris W.S. today, a private in my section. Died of diphtheria, 8 o'clock this morning. That happened often, didn't it?
Yes, that happened quite a bit. Yeah. Quite often.
When men died in these camps, they were cremated, weren't they?
Yes. Yeah.
What kind of a ceremony were you permitted to have for these men?
We weren't even allowed to watch. They'd pile them up out away from the yard a little ways, like cordwood, and burn them.
But you said you were a pallbearer. Did that mean that you were given the ashes?
Just in the barracks itself,
Oh, I see.
to
You
the
had
door.
your,
That's it.
you had your own little ceremony in the...
In the camp itself,
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
We weren't allowed to go out to where they burnt them.
Good Lord. About 40 men died, or 50 men died, according to my research. That year that you were in North Point, 50 men died from diphtheria alone.
Yeah,
Just from diphtheria. One almost every 3 or 4 days.
that's right, yeah.
That must have been a terrible way to spend your life.
Yeah.
On October 25th of 1942, there's a first glimmer of hope. You say that first air raid came today. Americans dropped a few bombs at 3:30 at midnight. Oh boy, I can hardly keep from singing today.
Hmm.
That must have been quite a sight.
Right, it really was, yeah.
Did you see these planes?
Yeah, but they were pretty high up.
Yeah.
We couldn't even tell if they were American planes. They were so high up.
Yeah.
They had to stay up for.
Well, yeah. Could you hear the bombs drop?
Oh yes, yes, we could hear them.
So that's how you knew they were American bombers.
Yeah, yeah.
When this started to happen, when the Japanese started to get bombed by the American planes, how did they react to you? What happened? Did they change their attitude towards you prisoners?
Yes, if anything, they got a little more cruel, if that could happen.
Yeah.
A little more wicked all the time. They'd call you out on parade any time of the night, or day, it didn't matter.
Hmm. And then on November the 29th, about a month later, you say, that dream came true at last. We received Red Cross parcels, 15 packages of food, and 1 bar of soap. I can't read the next thing. It's just like a bunch of kids getting Christmas parcels. Everybody's excited.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You told me once that most of those parcels that you received had been gone through and most of the stuff had been taken out.
That's right, yeah.
But you did receive some stuff.
Some stuff, yes. Yeah, there was a few things got through all right.
I wonder if the people who ever sent those Red Cross parcels over there realized how important those things were to you guys.
I think they did, but the Japanese got most of it.
Yeah. Because I noticed in your diary you mention Red Cross parcels quite often, and I can feel the elation, how happy you guys are, and what you say, like, and how you write at that particular time.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It certainly had an effect upon you. We talked about this guy before, but on Tuesday, December the 21st, just before Christmas, big inspection today, Captain Norris was severely slapped by Kamloops. We talked about the Kamloops kid.
The Kamloops kid, yeah.
Who was Captain Norris? Was he in your...
He wasn't in my platoon, but he was in that same camp. I forget which platoon he was with.
He was a Canadian?
Yes, yeah. And he was about 6 feet tall, so the Japs made him get down on his knees so they could slap him in the face, kick him in the face. They wouldn't reach up.
What would warrant a slapping in the face by a Japanese officer? What would the Canadian officer have to do? Would he have to do very much to get that kind of treatment?
No, next to nothing. Next to nothing. Just any little disagreement. You get down on your knees so they could slap you in the face.
Now we get to your first Christmas. It's 1 year since you surrendered. You've been a prisoner of war for 1 year now. On December the 25th of 1942, which happened to be a Friday, you write Christmas Day, 16-ounce MSV. What's MSV?
That came in the Red Cross parcel. It's kind of like that thick soup.
Oh, okay.
MSV is military rations anyway. It was something like their chunky soup.
Okay. Half a pound of pudding, potatoes, rice, a half-pound bun, 4 embassy cigarettes.
Yeah.
And then you say, Merry Christmas in a prison camp. Yes, oh boy, have I ever got the runs today. Was that...
Right.
Was that because of the rich food? Is that
rich? Yeah, right.
That's how it would happen, eh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Now then, comes a very, very important day in your life. Wednesday, January the 20th, 1943. This is, we are bouncing on the sea, the Tatu Moru Teiko. It's a good ship, 3 days ride, then we land at a Japanese port, take the train, and we are on it 24 hours, arrive at Omen.
Yeah.
The ship that took you across.
That was it.
What was it?
That same ship we pulled up beside in Honolulu, Pearl Harbor.
So that same spy ship that was in Honolulu was the one that took you to Japan.
Yeah, that's right.
So you you went to Nagasaki.
Yeah.
And from there, you would have been taken to that mining camp at Omen.
That's right, yeah.
Now, before we get into your life at Omen, this is a book, a sketchbook, that we're going to refer to quite often. It's called The Last Phase at Omen. And this was done by a person, Jeff Tyson.
Yeah.
Now, what can you tell me about Jeff Tyson?
He was a prisoner from Australia in that same camp. He was an artist in Australia before he joined the army.
Okay. So, would they allow him to make sketches like this?
The same as we done these diaries, he had to hide it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So he would make rough sketches, and then after the war probably... He survived the war, did he?
Yeah, he survived the war.
So then after the war he probably put this into a book.
Yeah, he sent that to us after the war was over, after we was home even.
All right.
Yeah.
Because we're going to refer to many of the pictures in here because they really illustrate very well your life at that prisoner of war camp at Omen.
Yeah, they really do, yeah.
That's an excellent book. Now, on February 1st to the 7th, you write, we were down in the mine for 3 days and working on top the last 2 days. Cold wind blowing. The work isn't really hard. You worked 3 years in that mine, didn't you?
Yeah.
Just about 3 years. Actually, 2 and a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
And all that time as a jackhammer.
Yeah, pretty near all that was on the jackhammer, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that mine, if you can. Is there... It was a coal mine.
A coal mine, and it went down on a 45-degree angle on a narrow gauge railroad track, and these cars went down on a big cable, and they had to pump air down there all the time because it was so hot. We were pretty near a half-mile underground, and big air pipes pumped air down in there. And the shaft itself was terrible to work in. Some places it was 2 feet high, 3 feet crawl in. Other places it was 14 foot thick of coal mine face.
Yeah.
That's where we worked most of the time, at that 14 foot face of coal.
See. On September, we jump way into the fall of 43 now. Again, much of this time you were sick, weren't you?
Yeah, quite a bit of it, yeah.
And so we'll jump ahead to September the 29th, 1943. Grantham was badly hurt down in the mine. The tunnel is constantly caving in.
Yeah.
Grantham was one of the grenadiers?
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
These mines weren't very safe, were they?
Oh, no. They were very dangerous.
Was there any shoring, like logs across?
Some places where there was, and there were lots of places there wasn't.
So it would just cave in?
Yep, yeah.
Anytime.
It was all volcanic rock down there anyway, and squares almost. Every once in a while that square would drop out. Water, seepage, and all this. Some of them squares were 4 feet thick and weighed 2 tons. They were heavy, heavy. They just dropped right down.
A lot of men died down there in those mines.
Quite a few, yes.
Because of the cave-ins and
cave-ins and sickness.
Yeah. October the 21st, 1943, you write, I have a few cuts, 2 or 3 stitches in my head, a large piece of the ceiling in the coal mine. Hurt 5 men.
Yeah.
So you got hit by one of those?
Yeah. Yeah.
You were lucky.
It was very lucky that it wasn't a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
November the 7th, 1943, you write again to your brother, or you write about your brother. You say, "Yes, Stanley, I still remember your birthday, but what age, I'm not sure. I'll make it 9 years. Fair weather yet, and a good soup for supper, meat, onions, and dumplings."
Mm-hmm.
You guys did all your own cooking, didn't you? Pretty well.
No,
No?
no, there was a so-called cook there in the camp.
Was he Japanese?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
There
I
were
see.
Japanese cooks. We'd line up and take our soup bowl or whatever. They'd dip it out to us.
Mm. Because it in some of these pictures in here, it sort of looks like, at least the pictures that we see of you guys eating, it
Oh.
seems like most of the sketches, it would almost give one the impression, and I thought I was given the impression that you guys sort of did.
Yeah, yeah. This is Red Cross parcels.
Yeah, these are Red Cross parcels in this case, but there is pictures of you fellas eating, and it looks like, here for example, night shift breakfast. We're going to talk about this picture, but it looks like you guys are handing out the food and so forth. And I was under the impression, in looking at these sketches, that the Canadian soldiers had to do the
their
cooking.
own cooking.
Yeah.
Not much of it.
Okay.
Most of it was Japanese.
November the 11th, a very important day in 1943. It's Remembrance Day. We stood to attention tonight on parade. Times are looking up a little. 2 mouth organs and a ukulele in camp now. Oh boy, it's really made me lonesome tonight to hear good music. Oh well, time will let hope. You kept Remembrance Day. Would they allow you to keep your little special services, or did you do these things when the soldiers weren't around?
Mostly when the soldiers weren't around. Yeah.
So all your little ceremonies had to be done secretly.
Yes, yes.
Okay. What about things like your little concerts? There's a picture in here of you fellows having a concert.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't necessarily kept away from the
No,
guards.
not necessarily. Sometimes the Jap soldiers would stand there and watch too.
Uh-huh.
Get a big laugh out of it too.
They did.
Yeah.
I just want to digress for a minute. Not all of the Japanese guards were mean, nasty people, were they?
Not all of them, no. There was some of them that was almost civilized. They could joke and laugh with you too. 'Cause we could talk good Japanese by that time.
Yeah.
Some of them was half civilized anyway.
Would they do special things for you, like maybe pass you some cigarettes or tobacco and things like that? Were these the guys that you could buy stuff from?
Yes, they were the guys we could buy stuff from. Or the odd one would maybe sneak in one cigarette or something like that. They'd be shot themselves if they got caught doing that.
Really?
Yeah.
Which opens up another area. What about civilians? Were there any civilians in these camps that would come in and do some of the work, or?
Yes, there was civilians in there washing up, different clean-up jobs, like so that.
Mm-hmm. These were local residents, were they, of the?
Japanese ones,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Because on December the 15th, you say, the civilians are guarding us now.
This is after the bomb, eh?
No, in December 15th, 1943. This is, I'm not sure when the bombing took place. It must have been sometime after the first bombs were landed, but not certainly before. We have a long way to go before we get to peace here.
Yeah, right.
So was there a time when the Japanese soldiers allowed civilians to look after you guys? There must have been, eh?
Yes, yes, there was. But the army wasn't far away.
No, no.
Yeah, that's right. Because our boss was a civilian in the mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
On Friday, the 31st of December, 1943, you write, New Year's Eve. I spent part of it in the mine, and at 12 o'clock midnight we had supper. A very small ration, rice and cabbage soup. Now, rice and cabbage soup was pretty common fare, wasn't it? That's,
yes.
You ate a lot of that, didn't you?
Yeah, right.
On January the 12th, 1944, you write, and that's all you write on that day, very good news of Germany. Now, obviously you're getting some news somehow of what's happening over in Europe.
Yeah, we must have at that rate. But what?
How did you hear about bombing in Berlin and things like that?
It must have been through the grapevine somehow or other. I don't know just how that got into camp.
You wouldn't have any radios or anything like that in camp?
No radios, no. No.
And the Japanese guards wouldn't talk where you could hear them, eh?
No, no, they wouldn't. Not about it, not about war or anything like that.
No. No. So some saw that grapevine was working somehow so that you knew.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Sunday, January the 30th, 1944. You say Shepherd hit the guard commander this morning, but he received a bad bayonet wound in his arm and got 20 days hard labor. Do you remember that incident? Do you remember who Shepherd was? Probably not.
He was one of the soldiers, but
Yeah.
I can't remember.
That incident, eh?
Yeah.
That wouldn't happen too often, would it? I mean, that a guy like Shepherd would hit a guard commander?
Oh no, that's very, very seldom happens because he wouldn't live to tell about it.
Yeah. On February the 5th, 1944, our room was raided again today, soap stolen, gloves, damn those Quebec half-breeds. Searby was caught with cigarettes. Another outburst of anger.
Yeah, that was the Royal Rifles from Quebec. They'd go around different times and steal whatever they could find. That was some of our own prisoners in the same camp.
Now, from what I understand in your diary, sometimes the grenadiers would also steal from each other.
Oh, yes. That's right.
I'm going to stop reading from your diary for a minute, and I'm going to read this paragraph in the latest edition of the Legion magazine, because it probably summarizes what life was like for a prisoner of war, at least in Japan, probably better than anything I have ever read.
Yeah.
The writer of this article, or of this particular diary, says, "Death is always with us. All of us are in very poor shape physically, and it does not take much in the way of sickness to push us over the brink. This is realized by all. Sickness is associated with death as closely as one associates a toothache with a dentist. It does not take much to make one lose heart and to give up fighting for life under these circumstances." Would that summarize the way you felt a lot of the time when you were sick?
Yes, right.
Some of the people that were sick were actually killed, weren't they, if they got too sick?
That's right, yeah.
Was there any ever danger, like you had been sick a couple of times severely, was there any danger of that happening to you? Did you recognize that that could happen to you?
Oh, yes, yeah.
There is always the thought, the author goes on, supposing you do get over your present bout of sickness, perhaps it's only to live for the next few days when you have contacted something else, and it may be a lot worse than your present sickness. There arises out of this feeling an envy for those who have died.
Yeah.
Did you, I don't know whether I should ask you this. Let me ask you it this way. The soldiers in this camp, did they wish sometimes, did they speak to you about this, the possibility they wished that they were dead?
Oh, yes, lots of them.
Again, a very difficult question. Did that lead sometimes to suicides? Did you ever recognize a man dying? He committed his own
Not
death?
to commit it himself, no.
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 There is also the nagging from the local propaganda that we may be struggling toward an end only to find that the war has been lost. During your stay in camp, at least in the first couple of years of camp, did you have hope that the Allies were going to win?
Yes, we did have. Yeah.
It kept you going?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Did the Japanese soldiers try to convince you that they were going to win?
Oh, yes.
All the time?
All the time. They'd won. And that's the way they'd tell us all the time. They were going to win every battle.
There is one other thing that I would like to try to explain, and that is our emotional instability. It is well known that the average Japanese laborer, whose status we have taken, is emotionally unstable. And we have certainly taken on this particular Japanese characteristic. What this author is saying is that you guys, being worked as hard as you were, like Japanese laborers, you were almost most of the time emotionally unstable. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
You had your highs and your lows, your depressions and your elations.
Right. Yeah.
You had to fight that just about every day, eh?
Yeah, I had to fight that most of the time.
The reason may be many, such as our diet, which leads to mental atrophy, our being treated as dogs, nothing to do in the way of creative thinking, no facilities for recreation, and our complete loss of contact with the world fairs. This has resulted in complete and unexpected show of emotion for which there is no apparent reason. Men will fight over the personal effects of a dead man before the body is cold, and yet 2 minutes later they will be crying like babies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that happen.
So when you lash out at the Grenadiers earlier and you lash out at the Quebec Rifles here, that's part of that whole thing, eh?
I would say so. Yeah.
On Wednesday, February the 23rd, 1944, you write, "Big day. I received a letter from Mabel. First letter I've had for 28 months.
Yeah.
Who is Mabel?
My sister.
28 months.
Yeah.
When you came back, did you ask your family whether they knew whether you were alive during this time or whether they thought you were dead? Did you ever discuss this when you got back to Canada?
Yeah, I guess I did.
But you don't know what
There was, for quite a while, they didn't have no contact whatsoever, whether it was alive or just on the missing list.
Mm-hmm. So the Canadian Armed Forces, the Canadian government, didn't contact them and say to them, look, Norman's a prisoner of war?
Not for a long time. They did after a year or so.
Okay.
But for a long time they didn't. There was no contact at all.
Mm-hmm. On Sunday, March the 5th, in 1944, you write, about 60 bags of flour came in today, and there is no tinko last night. Weather sure fine. In this book, tinko, T-E-N-K-O. You refer to it. What is Tenko?
Parade. Line you up on the parade and count you. Count who's there.
Oh, okay.
Tinko is a Japanese word for parade.
Ah, because it's referred to quite often in this book and in other books.
Yeah.
I wondered about that.
Oh, yeah.
Monday, March the 20th, 1944. Well, well, today I'm 24 years old. I had breakfast at 10:30 and then scrubbed the dining hall out, and I got an extra bowl of soup out of it. Ha ha, a happy birthday indeed.
Yeah.
That's quite a 24th birthday.
Right, yeah.
On May 24th, 1944, big day, received 10 letters from home. I'm uncle again. Now my beloved may still waits for me. Okay. With your wife sitting over there, I'm wondering if I should ask you this, but now my beloved still waits for me. Is that just a title of a song, or is that just an expression? Is
just an expression, I guess.
It's just an expression.
Yeah.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
It felt that way when I read your diary.
Mm-hmm.
But you received 10 letters from home, and you were announced that you were an uncle again.
Yeah.
And for the last time, on June the 3rd, 1944, you say, "Hello, Stanley, happy birthday. I guess you're a big boy now."
Yeah.
That's the third reference that you have to Stanley.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
On June the 15th, 1944, good news, a lot of planes flying around today. On the 16th of 44, oh boy, a real bombing not far away. We all spent most of the night down in the mine shaft. There are pictures in the sketchbook that show whenever there was a bombing near Omen, that you guys were taken down in the mine shaft, eh?
Yeah, in the mine shaft, or after a while we had an air raid shelter right in the hillside beside our barracks, and we'd be in there. But most of the time it was in the mine shaft.
So the Japanese looked after you to that degree.
To that degree, yes. They didn't want us to see the planes overhead.
Oh.
That was one big reason they would get us out of sight.
I see.
Yeah. Because we used to laugh if we could see them. We did see some. These American planes fighting the Jap planes. The Jap plane would fly right down here at tree level because he had a awful slow plane, like our Tiger Moth, double-winged. And the Americans was coming with them Spitfires and Grummins. They were like a wasp after a snail. The American plane could outrun them Jap planes any place, any time.
Okay. On October the 2nd, 1944, big holiday, boxing for prizes. There was boxing for prizes?
Yeah, yeah, fist fights.
Really?
Yeah.
Bath towels, soap, whiskey?
Imagine that. We did get some whiskey, yeah.
Cigarettes?
Yeah.
5 men went out hunting snakes, got 9. They are good eating. I went into hospital today feeling tough.
Because he ate too many snakes, I guess.
You guys were allowed to go out and hunt snakes?
Yeah,
so
with a guard. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was several times he'd go out on hunting snakes
For extra food?
to bring for the food.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember how they tasted?
Yeah, like eating a chicken's neck.
Really?
Much the same as white meat.
Yeah.
Much the same. Yeah.
Well, I guess it was protein, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was something.
January the 23rd of 1945, we're now getting near the end. 2 years in Omen, came in with 200 men. Now we have 329, mostly English. I'm still hospitalized. That indicates to me that some men came and some went out from time to time. Because you had an influx here of 200 men. Most of these were English guys brought in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't recall that, eh? That particular incident.
Don't remember much about it, but I do know it did happen. That's about all.
Mm-hmm. Before I get to this thing that I've got in my hand here, this wallet, you took this wallet from Canada with you? This wallet
Yes.
stayed with you all the time?
All the time.
Complete with this picture in it?
Yeah.
Or was that?
But yes, I managed to hide that all the time, underground, under the mat too.
And this is a picture of your family, including the family dog.
Right, yeah.
Boy, this wallet has some history.
Yeah.
Now, this thing. Tell me about this thing.
That's a Japanese bullet. After we was taken prisoners, we were in the Kowloon barracks.
Oh,
and
this is way back then, eh?
Yeah, they were still fighting back and forth. And that bullet went into a wood frame on the bed I was laying on, about a foot from my head. I could smell it burning in there. And we had about a 6-inch spike, was sharpened on the end, and I dug that bullet out of that bed frame.
That's so amazing to me. That you could have kept that all that time. And it stayed in this wallet just like that pretty well?
Yeah, that's where I hid it.
You guys did such amazing things. It always just boggles my mind to know how you survived and how seemingly how easily you did this. Sunday, June the 3rd, 1945. Oh, correction. Hello, Stanley. Happy birthday, brother. I'm still hospitalized. You spent a fair amount of time in hospital.
Quite a bit, yeah. Yeah.
What was the problem this time? Do you remember?
Well, same thing caused from beriberi and yellow jaundice and all this.
Okay. Now, August the 9th of 1945, some really great news. Nagasaki was bombed.
Oh, yeah.
But you never heard that, did you?
No, it was Hiroshima, the ones we heard.
Yeah. Because on August the 15th, Hiroshima was bombed.
Hiroshima, yeah.
Now, you saw that cloud, didn't you?
Yes. We were they said about 125 miles from there. But it shook the tiles off the roof. We just figured it's another earthquake, because we felt lots of them, quite a few of them.
Yeah. When you look at a map, Nagasaki and Hiroshima are almost the same distance from the camp. But I guess because of the geological factors and wind and so forth, you felt one and not the other.
Yeah, well, Hiroshima was up, maybe it was about the same distance, but Nagasaki was down at the ocean.
Yes.
And we came through some big hills up to our camp.
Right. Now, Wednesday, August the 15th, 1945, the day that Hiroshima was bombed, you write in your diary 3 words: last holiday all. Last holiday all.
All. Yeah.
I didn't quite understand that. Do you remember what you meant?
Oh, not really.
Okay.
Last.
Then on August the 17th, 2 days after the bombing of Hiroshima, you write, dished out all Red Cross supplies. The war is over all right, but it sure is hard to believe. No more work in Japan. And then on August the 21st, you write, oh boy, it seems a month ago they said this war was over. Time sure does drag now. And then in great big capital letters you write, home sweet home.
Yeah.
The Japanese reacted very strangely to the bombing of Hiroshima. You tell me the story about that, would you?
Yeah, well, after that bomb dropped, our guards all left the camp. They went out right away. But we could go out then and walk up to a dozen in the army or a whole lineup of the army, and they didn't do nothing. They were scared. We could have took every rifle, whatever we wanted from them. They were just plain scared. In fact, the most of them threw their guns down. They were done.
Mm-hmm. They knew they were
they knew
defeated.
they were beat.
So from that point on, you guys sort of looked after yourself. Huh?
We looked after ourselves for, it was almost a month.
Oh yes, yeah, before you were taken out of
Yeah.
there, it was a long time.
Yeah.
August the 25th, you write, morning, expect planes to drop supplies, food and cigarettes now, 8 p.m. Rumor has it they will drop tomorrow. Meals and smoking worse now than it was before the war ended.
Yeah.
How come it was worse now than when the war ended?
They didn't get their supplies there yet. We didn't.
And the Japanese weren't supplying you with the
No,
food?
we couldn't even get any Japanese stuff.
I stop for just a minute. I want to talk to you a little bit about what this is called. Horsehair tobacco, is that right?
That's what we call it, just hair tobacco.
Hair tobacco. I hope I can get a wad of it out, because
Yeah,
if I do, it'll...
yeah, yeah, that's okay. Just
Now that really looks like horsehair, doesn't it?
it does.
I mean, that is very, very coarse tobacco.
Right.
This is actually a Japanese pipe, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And it comes in what looks like 3 sections.
Yeah.
The bowl. This is the filter.
That's
I guess-
that's just a chunk of bamboo.
Yeah.
Filter. Yeah.
And then the thing at the end.
Yeah.
Now, did most of the Japanese smoke this?
Yes.
Were you guys allowed to smoke this, or were you?
Yeah. Every once in a while they'd give us a puff on one. They wouldn't allow us to have the pipe.
Oh no.
No.
And this is what they smoked, this horsehair tobacco.
Yeah. It's strong. They'd only smoke about 2 pipefuls, and that was enough.
Well, I can see that the bowl isn't very big.
No, it's very small. But
Yeah.
it's strong.
One of these times I'm going to
You
have
don't
to
wanna
try
light it
that.
up? Well, sure. It won't kill you.
Now the war is ended. And I'd like to talk now about one of your guards, a guy by the name of Hitler.
Hitler.
Okay, you got your revenge on this man, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
Tell me about that, would you?
He really looks like Hitler, don't he?
Well, I don't know, he's got a mustache, but I guess to me, why did you call him Hitler? Because
Because he
acted like it?
cool, acted like Hitler. He
How
was in fact, he was the head boss of the mine shaft. He very seldom came down the mine, but he'd come to the top of the mine with us.
Mhm.
And then he'd meet us there again when we came up.
So when the rest of the men dropped their weapons and ran, you guys, on that particular day, you caught him? Is that?
Yeah, that's right. We caught him at the mine head. And we put him in one of these hackles.
Those carts?
Yeah, them steel carts.
Okay.
We
And then what?
Well, that shaft goes down on a 45-degree angle. That's pretty steep.
Yeah.
We put him in that steel cart, tied him in there, because he wasn't going to stay. And then we pulled the pin. That track went down, that truck went down that track 150 miles an hour or more, and it crashed down there. He was in it. We never did go to see what happened.
No, I guess not. how did, I'll get to this later. Let's go on to August the 28th, 1945. Best show I've ever seen in my life. Big planes, 4 motors, USA, number 16. Dropped cigarettes and foodstuffs in 45-gallon gasoline barrels this afternoon. I stood up on the roof and watched the whole show.
Mm-hmm.
Was it you who was telling me that one of those gasoline barrels came right into one of your buildings?
Yes. In fact, that guy, the gasoline barrel, the handles on the side broke off, and this barrel came through. But the guy that it killed was our ration man at the mine head.
Okay.
He was supposed to give us, allow us so many ounces of rice a day. That's the guy it killed. It came right through the roof. So that was one time we was glad to see him get killed with food.
And then you go on August the 28th, you say, oh, how happy this camp is tonight. Light a cigarette with a match out of your own pocket.
Yeah, right.
First time since 25th of December, 1941. Oh boy, it really feels good.
Yeah,
The first time you were allowed to light a cigarette with a match out of your own pocket.
right.
Look at one little tiny little thing like that was such a joy.
Yeah, that's right.
August the 30th, you say, oh boy, the big bombers were over today and dropped 40 parachutes loaded with food. Red, yellow, blue, white. It was a lovely show.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a picture in this
Yeah, that's
sketchbook
right.
showing
Yeah.
the parachute. Now, on September the 7th, I want you to talk about this because this is fascinating to me. On September the 7th, you're still not rescued. You're still in the camp. The war's been over for quite a while. The last 3 days, I have been out walking the countryside getting potatoes, onions, and chickens. It's very hot these days. We expect another drop. My old friend came into camp last night, Herbert Bowman. We had a radio in camp now and get news. Before we go to this last part, you guys went on raiding parties now, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To get food.
Yes, that's right.
Tell me about that. Like,
Well, we just go out. It was kind of a farm country we was in around us, rice fields, and we'd just go into their yard, their house, and if we'd see a chicken there, we'd pick it up and take it. They didn't try to stop us.
that leads me to the question, how did the civilians react to you guys wandering around their countryside?
They'd just look at us. They were scared. They wouldn't do nothing to stop us.
I don't know if you want to answer this question, but I'd like to ask it anyway. Did any of the Canadian soldiers molest the Japanese civilians after you guys were no longer under guard? Did you go out there and hurt any of those people?
No, that's Hitler's the only one we bothered with. The rest of the civilians we didn't mean nothing to us. They didn't do us any harm.
So you didn't in any way molest them or hurt them?
Not that I know of. Maybe it
Yeah.
was some of it done, but not that I know of.
Okay. This I find really tragic. On Sunday, September the 9th, 6 men died in camp, all liquor poisoning, and 5 or 6 more very sick.
Yes, I remember that. A bunch of these soldiers took a Japanese train and backed it up the track about 30 miles and got into a liquor store, and this liquor had been poisoned already before they got there, I guess. They figured they knew the train was coming, and they poisoned this liquor. Vodka is what it was.
Mm-hmm. Or sake or something.
Sake, yeah.
So the Japanese poisoned this liquor, and then so when you guys drank it.
That's right, yeah.
On Monday, September the 17th, 1945, 3 more men left camp for hospital. And I don't know what that word is. Raining steady for the last 48 hours. 3 more men left camp for hospital. What hospital? Like, what's happening here that you guys are leaving for a hospital? Do you remember that at all?
They got pretty sick, but I don't know what hospital. It'd have to be a Japanese hospital, that's all. But
now, before you guys were rescued, life at the camp was not too bad. You guys had a fair amount of food?
yeah, yes, fair enough.
There's a picture sketch in here about a young, I think he's Korean, who's
yes.
cooking food for you fellas.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
The Tyson says, last days at Omen, full of American food, smoking American cigarette, Korean boy to do cooking and cleaning, just waiting for the boat tickets.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, a lot of these Korean kids would come in and, well, it didn't have to be a kid. They'd do anything for a cigarette a day or anything at all. It didn't matter.
Did you ever know how these Korean kids got there? Like, were they had they been captured also? Or?
Oh yes, they had Korean slave labor there all the time.
Oh.
They had to work down the mine as slaves.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and their families was there with them.
Okay. There's a picture in here of a cemetery at Omen.
Oh yeah.
It shows all the crosses.
Mm-hmm.
POW cemetery at Omen Camp. Men who died from sickness and mine accidents.
Yeah. Yeah.
In total, 260 men died in these camps.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those 260 would you guess? Because I couldn't find the numbers. How many would you guess would have died at Omen?
At Omen?
Yes. Would there be 50? Would there be that?
Yes, 50 anyway, if not more.
Because there was 4 camps, wasn't there?
Yeah, 4 camps, I think.
Right. On September the 22nd, 1945, at 6:30, you left Omen. And what ship did you get onto? Do you remember that? Was it the Prince Robert?
Prince Robert.
There's a picture in one of the history books that I see of one of the officers at Prince Robert taking down the statistics of you fellas. And I didn't know whether all of you guys were freed on the Prince Robert or not.
No, some went out by plane,
Oh,
but
I
we
see.
went to the ship.
Okay,
Yeah, I believe it was the Prince Robert,
okay,
but you had to be.
all right. What was that trip like going back to Vancouver?
Going back,
Yeah.
it was pretty rough. Out near Guam, I think it was. We dropped anchor and stayed there for most of 2 days. The ocean got too rough.
Mm-hmm.
They dropped anchor and sat there. And then we pulled in from Guam. We landed in the Philippines at Manila and went to a American tent
Base.
base is what it was. And the Japanese were still fighting there then in Manila. They'd come out of the hills at night, you could hear them, guns going. But we were in this big American camp, we were safe enough.
Mm-hmm. And from Manila you went to Honolulu?
No, we didn't go back to Honolulu. From Manila, came right to Vancouver.
Oh, I see. Now, on October the 26th, which was a Friday, you pulled into dock at Esquimalt.
Yeah,
And that was on the Prince Robert, so that's why I thought that you might have probably...
That's the one, yeah.
And do you remember that day, pulling into Esquimalt?
Yes, I do. Because there was, everybody on the ship was all standing on the one side watching as we pulled into the dock. And there was a terrific big crowd there to meet the ship. But after we got off the ship, I don't remember, we was more or less herded into the camp. We had to stay there for a few days too, right into our camp.
What happened at that camp? What kind of things did you...
Inspections of all kinds, needles and vaccinations. And
so you were looked after medically in those camps?
yes, right.
Okay. October 31st, which is Halloween, and I chose this quotation for that reason. It's a Wednesday, you say. Well, it is Halloween. I guess I don't play any tricks tonight. Now, the next thing you write is, sisters are treating us very good. Sisters are treating...
Oh, that was the nurses.
Oh, okay.
They called them sisters. And
they're the ones looking after you in the hospitals and so on?
yes, yeah.
Okay. Now, you arrived in Winnipeg in November. Who was there to meet you?
My dad was there for one. My mother wasn't. There's some of the rest of the family. No,
Was there a big show on in Winnipeg when you guys arrived?
yes, there was, yes. There was a terrific crowd met the train there when we got off.
As big as when you left?
Yes, about the same.
How... Okay, you get back to Swan River shortly thereafter, eh?
Yes, but we was
You're in Winnipeg a short time?
short time, yeah, a few days, till we got our discharge from the army, and then we came home.
Tell me about getting back to Swan River. What was that like for you? Can you remember that day?
Yes, in a kind of a way. I've been drinking quite a bit, I know that. So I don't remember too much of it.
You deserve that.
Yeah, I suppose. But we drank so much because pretty near everybody you'd meet on the street, they had us women, they had a son over there too, and he never come back, and did I see him? All this kind of stuff.
I see. And everybody wanted to pour you a drink and talk to you.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, I guess so. Was it tough adjusting to civilian life?
No, not really. No, it was... How to put that, but...
Let me ask you, did you ever wish you could put the uniform back on again? Shortly after you got home?
No, no. I didn't want to put it back on then.
You didn't?
A couple of years later I thought I wouldn't mind, but...
But it took a couple of years for you to look at that uniform anyway positively again.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So you didn't want to re-enlist right
No,
away?
not really.
When you got back to Swan, what did you do? What did you do with your life? Did you become a farmer? What happened?
Yeah, shortly after I came back, I got put in Winnipeg for this VLA farm.
Right.
It was all bush. I bought a house in Harlington and moved it down there by tractors, and we had to cut a hole in the bush to move the house in. But I bought that farm for $1,900. quarter section and 80 acres off another one.
That's not the farm you're on now, is it?
Yes.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's not much bush left on it.
No, no. That's why I asked. There's not
Yeah.
much bush around. That's pretty cleared off.
Yeah. Yeah,
What did you do? Go in there with an axe, or did you have?
I done a lot with an axe. Well, not a lot. 20 acres maybe, and then the rest I hired bulldozers. Big cats.
I see. Okay, we brought May in now to talk about Norman a little more and about their life together. I want to start, May, by asking you a very difficult question. I know this is a hard one for you to answer, but you knew Norm before the war, right?
Yes, I did. He worked for my dad.
Right. Tell me, how do you think he changed that 4 years of being a prisoner of war? How did that change him, in your opinion?
Well, it just took him quite a while to forget what he had went through. Otherwise, there was no difference. Personally.
Okay. Was there a physical change in him?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
He was the same person to me.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. When did you and Norm get married?
On April the 30th, 1947.
And you had 5 children, right?
Yes, we did.
Could you name those children for me while we show the picture?
Carol was the oldest girl. And then there was Alan and Roy and Larry and Bernice.
Okay. And how many grandchildren do you have now?
We have 15 grandchildren.
15!
Yes.
Boy.
9 great-grandchildren.
Wow. Christmas is a big day around the Broome house, eh?
That's for sure.
Oh, I tell you. The trees get bigger and the presents get larger and more of them all the time, eh?
Yeah.
Now, I know that you have moved to the farm that you're on today, and we have a picture here of Norm doing what he does now the most, and that is hunt and trap. But this is the house that you live in now, right?
That's right.
Okay. And Norm, you spend a lot of time trapping, don't you?
Yes.
What do you trap?
Beaver, marten, fox, mostly beaver.
Okay. And you do all your own skinning, your own stretching, and all the rest of it, eh?
Yes.
Have you given up on the farm now? Are you doing any farming at all?
No, I'm just on the farm. I turned the farm over to my 2 boys.
So when you're not trapping and when you're not helping your sons on the farm, what do the 2 of you do for recreation? Do you travel a lot now, or
Not really. Play bingo.
play bingo? Good old Legion bingo, eh?
We're missing it tonight.
Yeah, that's right, you are. Well, I guess that's as good a way to spend your life together as there is any. And I want to really, really thank you, Norm. This has been, and May, of course. This has been one of the really great pleasures of my life interviewing you. I must say that I enjoy doing this as much as I've enjoyed doing anything that I've ever done. And I want to thank you for giving us all this time and being so honest and open with us. It's just been a great pleasure, and I want to really thank you again, the both of you.
You're very welcome.